I handed my resignation letter to Howard Crane with a calm I didn't really feel. 12 years under that smug bastard, and this was how I finally got out. Standing in his glass-walled office, cardboard box in hand, watching him skim the letter like it was a joke. My name's Derek Langford. I'm 46 years old. I live in Kansas City. And that morning, I stopped letting Howard Crane take credit for my work. He laughed. Actually laughed. At your age, good luck finding another job in this field, he said, like I was some washed-up middle manager instead of the guy who built the backbone of his entire company. His laugh was loud and stupid, and it echoed through the damn office. Even his coffee mug rattled when he slammed it down, still chuckling. He leaned back all smug. So what's in the box, Derek? Family photos? Your kid's artwork? I looked him dead in the eye. My backup drives? He stopped laughing. Howard was 56, wore suits that cost more than my monthly mortgage, and couldn't code a damn Hello World script. But he could talk. And for 12 years, that was our silent arrangement. I built the software, he took the credit. Optimized logistics frameworks that saved companies millions. My code. Industry accolades. His face on the magazine covers. Quick note. Before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. I didn't mind the spotlight being elsewhere at first. I'm not flashy. Never cared about speeches or panels. But watching him strut around like he was some tech god while I sat in meetings explaining things to him, it started to get old. Real old. And Howard loved attention like a drug. He fed on praise and used my work to score it. Half the time, he didn't even understand what he was talking about. He just regurgitated my words from meetings, twisted just enough to sound visionary. But I didn't just build the code, I built the policy. Years ago, after a close call with a shady investor, I wrote internal guidelines to protect intellectual property, specifically making sure that technical documentation stayed with the creator. Howard signed off on it without blinking. I backed up everything, every version, every spec sheet, algorithm update, bug fix, labeled, time-stamped, mine. When I told him the box was full of backup drives, he looked like he'd swallowed glass. That was the first time I'd ever seen Howard Crane sweat in his own office. As the elevator doors closed behind me, I remembered exactly when this all started. It was 18 months earlier, company mixer at a rooftop bar downtown. The kind where everyone pretends they actually like each other while nursing cheap cocktails and waiting for the open bar to run out. I wasn't even going to stay long, but I caught Howard near the balcony, chatting up one of the board members. Real smug, drink in one hand, arm around some junior VP. He was mid-story about our latest logistics upgrade, rattling off half-true jargon like he invented the whole damn thing. It's just how my mind works, he said. I don't see code, I see solutions. That line did it, right there. I didn't react. Just stood by the bar with my club soda, staring straight at him and nodding along like I hadn't written every damn line he was bragging about. But in my head, switch flipped. I knew I was leaving, and I wasn't going out quiet. From that night on, I started collecting. Emails where I spelled things out for him like he was a kid learning fractions. Meeting recordings where he blankly nodded while we explained the simplest models. He'd parrot my words later like they were his ideas. But I had the originals, dated and clean. I even documented which internal pitches I wrote, and when he stole lines straight off them in public interviews. It was all going into a folder. One day I told myself, I'll walk out and drop this whole thing like a brick. The tricky part was finding a way out. Howard was paranoid. I found out later he'd been intercepting recruiter emails, had ET flagging messages from known competitors and rerouting them to him first, and the ones that got through. He'd email them back, pretending to be me, trashing my own reputation so they wouldn't pursue me. I saw the copies later in the mail logs. The man was unhinged, but he didn't realize I'd been outmaneuvering him for months. 6 months ago, I reached out directly to someone who wouldn't fall for his smoke and mirrors. Rita Navarro, head of engineering at Vector Path. She'd spoken on a panel 2 years back about algorithmic fairness, and I remembered thinking, she gets it. So I cold emailed her, sent over a high-level breakdown of my optimization engine, and hinted at what was really happening under Howard's name. She called me the next day. "Let me guess," she said. "Howard's the mouth, you're the mind?" Something like that. We talked for over an hour. She asked sharp questions. I had sharp answers. She didn't waste time. 2 weeks later, I had a formal offer on my desk. Chief Technology Officer at Vector Path. Better pay, my own team, full control over engineering strategy, and the one thing I hadn't gotten in over a decade, credit. I accepted, quietly. The NDA alone was thicker than a phone book, but I didn't care. I wasn't burning my old bridge. I was paving a road straight through it. I waited until the contract was final before I handed him my resignation letter. 6 weeks' notice, straight on paper. He panicked. You can't just walk out. What about the non-compete? He barked. I was never executive tier. That clause doesn't apply. He blinked. You signed the employee agreement? Yep. You should have read it closer. You made sure I wasn't classified above senior developer. Remember that? Saves the company money. Costs you now. He started pacing. What about proprietary information? I'm not taking anything that isn't mine. He looked like he wanted to throw something. This is about loyalty, Derek. No, Howard. This is about 12 years of you putting your name on my work like you wrote it in your sleep. He stood there with his mouth half open, like he still couldn't believe someone finally told him no. I walked out of that meeting with the same calm I'd walked into it with. But inside, I couldn't wait to watch what came next. I'd barely made it 10 steps down the hall when I heard Howard behind me, fast and angry. Derek, we need to talk. Now I stopped, turned. He was flushed, collar tugged loose, that fake calm slipping quick. You can't take those drives, he said, pointing at the box like it was a live bomb. That's company IP. Nope, I said. That's my IP. It was developed on company time, under company resources. It belongs to us. I shook my head. You signed the documentation policy. Page 12, original code, algorithms, and architecture authored independently by technical staff remain sole intellectual property unless explicitly transferred by contract. I wrote that clause. You didn't even read it. His mouth opened, then shut. I kept going. I also have full documentation on all 17 patents you filed under your name. All of them built from base code I wrote solo. No edits, no contributions from you or anyone else. I've got internal submission logs to prove it. That one hit hard. His hands went to his hips, but he had no comeback. He finally dropped the act. What do you want? I paused, took my time. Nothing, I said, just letting you know what's coming. He didn't say a word after that. I turned and walked. No goodbyes, no fake handshakes, just silence and the weight of the box in my arms. 12 years of work that man tried to wear like a second skin. That was over. The elevator doors opened and I stepped in. As it dropped, my phone buzzed. Rita, our legal team says you have a solid case for inventor reassignment. Let's meet Monday. I smiled, tight, quiet. That was the first real breath I'd taken in months. Down in the lobby, I nodded at the receptionist and pushed out into the parking lot. Sun in my face, box under one arm, future wide open. I got in my car and drove. Didn't look back once. I parked outside Vector Path's headquarters that Monday morning and walked in like I'd been there for years. The security badge felt good in my hand. My name was on the office door before lunch. First week, Rita brought me into 3 major product strategy meetings. I didn't just have a seat at the table. I ran it. And from my new corner office on the 15th floor, full glass windows and a skyline view, I had the perfect angle to watch Howard fall apart in real time. It started slow. His LinkedIn page had always been a shrine to himself. Bold posts about redefining logistics and revolutionizing systems. Then, just nothing. A couple weeks in, the tone changed. He started posting vague crap about team synergy and the future of collaborative innovation. And the comments? That was the best part. Can you explain how this model scales under high-load simulations? How does this improve on your previous framework? Which part of this architecture is proprietary? He either ignored them or dropped canned responses like, more to come, stay tuned, which only made things worse. See, Howard never planned beyond me. I was the plan. I wrote the frameworks. I briefed the product team. I crafted the slides for every pitch, demo, and panel he ever stood on. Without me, he had nothing but buzzwords and empty smiles. And that year, he had committed to present at 4 major industry conferences. 4. All locked in months before I resigned. Now, he was trapped. I didn't even have to move a finger, didn't need to leak anything or throw shade online. The collapse was already written into the structure he stole. I had built the engine. He'd just been riding it. One afternoon, I scrolled through his company's blog and saw a new post. The future of logistics optimization. Sounded fancy. I clicked. It was 4 paragraphs of absolute fluff. Not one mention of metrics, models, data sets, or simulation results. Just empty phrases like seamless integration and client-centric design. It read like a college freshman trying to hit a word count. I closed the tab. The next day, Rita walked into my office with a smirk. "You seen this?" She handed me her phone, a screen grab of a comment on one of Howard's recent posts. "Hey Howard, question. Is Derek Langford still on your engineering team?" No answer. I handed it back. "Let's just say he's not gonna like his calendar this quarter." Rita grinned. "Good. I already bought tickets to the summit next month." I leaned back in my chair, hands behind my head, and looked out the window. Let the unraveling begin. 2 weeks later, I was at my desk at VectorPath with a hot cup of coffee and the live stream open on my second monitor. Regional Logistics and Tech Summit. Nothing fancy, just one of those middle-tier industry events held in Chicago every spring. But Howard had been listed as a panelist for months. He couldn't back out without raising questions. So, he showed up. The panel was loaded with legit people. Senior engineers from FedEx and Oracle, a couple PhDs from Stanford and MIT, and then Howard Crane, sitting stiff in his Navy suit, gripping his lapel mic like it might save him. First 10 minutes were introductions and softball moderator questions. Howard smiled a lot, nodded while others spoke, gave short, vague answers when it was his turn. Then came the deeper dive. Moderator asked about emerging optimization strategies for dynamic routing, something Howard had slapped his name on in 5 different blog posts over the past year. He leaned in. "It's a hybrid approach," he said confidently. "We blend various methodologies for enhanced output and system resiliency." I paused the stream, rewound, listened again. That's when Dr. Amanda Lin stepped in, one of the sharpest data scientists in the field. She leaned toward her mic, polite but precise. "Which methodologies exactly?" she asked. "And what's your constraint satisfaction strategy for high-dimensional data sets?" Howard blinked. You could almost hear the panic setting in behind his eyes. "Well," he said, "it's an adaptive framework. A kind of modular blend, really." Amanda didn't let up. "Okay, but are we talking graph-based heuristics? LP relaxations? What's the convergence guarantee?" He stammered. Repeated the words adaptive and modular like they were magic spells. The other panelists looked sideways at each other. One guy scratched his neck and wouldn't make eye contact. Amanda finally stepped in and answered the question herself, breaking down current best practices and challenges. Howard just nodded along like he understood. He didn't. I sipped my coffee and watched him sweat through his collar. He didn't say another meaningful thing for the rest of the panel, just one-liners and agreement noises while the real experts carried the conversation. Tech blogs pounced that same afternoon. One headline hit before the stream even ended. "Industry genius or just a face? Doubts rise." Around Howard Crane. The best part? I didn't have to say a word. He exposed himself, just like I knew he would. The night before the big international conference, I was still at the office, late. My team had gone home, lights were dim in the hallway, but I stayed, running tests, reviewing proposals, killing time. My phone rang. Unknown number. I knew exactly who it was. I answered. "Yeah?" A pause, then his voice. "Derek, I need your help." Howard, and he sounded nothing like the guy who once laughed me out of his office. No arrogance, no fake charm, just worn-down panic. "I've got the keynote tomorrow, the big one in Atlanta," he said. "I don't have enough. I've been trying to prep all week, but you don't know what the hell you're talking about," I said flat. Silence. "I just need something. Slides, notes, old frameworks, talking points. Anything to get through it. I stood up from my desk, phone still to my ear, walked over to the window. City lights flickered below, a storm creeping over the edge of the skyline. "You've been faking this for 12 years, Howard," I said. "Time to see how good your act really is." "You don't understand. They're expecting something big. The whole thing's riding on this talk," I smiled without meaning to. "They'll eat me alive," he said quietly. I let the silence sit. Let him hear it. "Then maybe," I said, "you shouldn't have stolen credit from the guy feeding you answers all those years." "Derek, please." The desperation in his voice didn't even move me, not an inch. He wasn't sorry for what he'd done. He was just scared because the safety net was gone. "I can't help you," I said. "You made your bed." He tried to say something else, but I didn't let him. I hung up, dropped the phone on the desk, took one last look at the Atlanta prep folder I'd been working on for Vector Path's booth, then shut the laptop. Let the storm come. The ballroom was packed. Over 3,000 people. Engineers, CTOS, investors, analysts, reporters, shoulder to shoulder under gold chandeliers and buzzed fluorescent panels. It was the biggest conference of the year for our industry, and Howard had somehow still held on to the keynote spot. I sat front row with Rita and half of our engineering team, Vector Path badges clipped to our collars. We didn't clap when he walked out. Howard looked like hell. His suit was pressed, sure, but he was pale, sweating before he even hit the podium. He scanned the crowd and blinked fast, like he was trying to convince himself this was still salvageable. He started talking. "Good morning. Today I want to talk about the future of innovation and, the expanding role of integrated technologies in adaptive logistics." Fluff. Straight out of a business school brochure. His slides clicked on behind him. Pixelated charts, random arrows, a stock photo of a warehouse. The formatting didn't even match. It looked like a middle school PowerPoint. The murmurs started early. People leaned in, confused. Then came the first question. Dr. Wen from MIT, seated halfway down the left aisle. She didn't raise her hand, just spoke up with a calm, clear voice. "Can you explain your handling of nonlinear constraint satisfaction in your latest model?" Howard hesitated, microphone trembling in his hand. "That's proprietary," he said. "Not good enough." Dr. Wen adjusted her glasses. "Okay, but even at a high level, what's the mathematical foundation? Are you using Lagrangian relaxation, dynamic programming, something else?" He licked his lips. We're using a hybrid approach, modular, adaptable frameworks designed for cross-sector optimization, pure nonsense. A string of words he'd heard me use in passing and never bothered to understand. Then Dr. Okoro from Amazon leaned forward. "Your published white paper contradicts basic complexity principles for mixed integer models. Care to clarify?" Howard's face flushed deep red. His fingers gripped the podium so hard they went white. He stammered something about scalable pipelines and real-time forecasting engines, but even his voice cracked halfway through. He looked like a guy about to get tackled. No exit, no backup. People were shifting in their seats now, whispering, some of them laughing under their breath. I didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at him while he collapsed in real time. The moderator stepped in, clearly uncomfortable. "Let's, pivot to another area." But it was too late. The room was already turning on him. Howard dropped his clicker, bent down to pick it up, and knocked over the water bottle beside the podium. It rolled off stage and clattered onto the floor. He looked up, eyes wide. Nobody saved him. Not this time. Then Rita stood up. "I believe there's been some confusion," she said, loud enough to cut through the tension. "Those algorithms weren't developed by Howard Crane." Heads turned. Howard flinched. She pointed straight at me. "They were developed by Derek Langford, our new CTO at Vector Path." The entire room shifted. Some gasped. A few already recognized my name. I stood up, calm, and made my way to the stage. Walked right past Howard. Didn't look at him, didn't need to. He stepped back like I'd physically pushed him. I took the mic. "My name's Derek Langford," I said. "I built the optimization framework you've been discussing. Originally for Crane Systems, now owned and operated under Vector Path." I tapped the clicker. The screen shifted to a clean, high-contrast slide I'd brought with me. I wasn't even on the schedule, but I'd come prepared, just in case. This is a multi-layered routing system built on constraint decomposition, Lagrangian multipliers, and custom convergence models for scalable real-time logistics. I broke it down piece by piece: graph theory applications, objective cost balancing, node pruning and high-dimension maps. I spoke in plain terms, not to dumb it down, but to connect. I knew exactly how to explain this because I actually built it, and the crowd locked in. You could hear pens scribbling, see phones come up to record. Even the moderator leaned forward in his chair like he wanted to take notes. Applause broke out halfway through. Real applause. Not polite clapping, earned. Then the questions came, smart ones. How do you manage failure rates under incomplete data sets? What's your solution for latency and predictive rerouting? I answered every single one without hesitation. Rita nodded at every response. She didn't need to say a word. This was the moment we'd both been waiting for. Behind me, Howard stood like a statue, mouth dry, face blank. Then someone near the front asked it. Why did Mr. Crane present work he clearly didn't understand? Howard stepped up to the second mic, voice thin, like air was barely getting through. We collaborated, he said. It was a joint effort. No one even blinked. He could have said the sky was blue and people would have still checked the weather. The moderator turned back to me. Would you like to continue with a technical Q&A, Mr. Langford? I nodded. Gladly. Howard stayed frozen behind me as I dove back in. By the time the session wrapped, half the room had lined up to speak with me, and he'd already slipped off stage. Nobody noticed. Nobody cared. The fallout hit hard. By the time I walked off that stage, tech blogs were already posting side-by-side clips, me explaining the system, Howard stammering like a kid who didn't study for a test. Within 24 hours, it was everywhere. Biggest tech fraud in a decade, they called it. Headlines, memes, think pieces. One clip of Howard dropping his clicker mid-speech hit 2 million views in a week. 3 of his biggest clients pulled out before Friday. The rest followed over the next month. Investors started asking questions he couldn't answer, and board members stopped returning his calls. He resigned quietly. No statement, no damage control. Just vanished from LinkedIn and disappeared from the public eye like he'd never been there. Meanwhile, I filed for inventor reassignment on every one of those 17 patents, the ones he submitted under his name, using my code, my models, my math. Our legal team backed it up with full commit logs, design drafts, test docs, and timestamps. 6 months later, the USPTO sent the confirmation. I was now listed as the sole inventor across the board. Licensing deals started rolling in fast. VectorPath went from strong to dominant. Our revenue doubled. Rita promoted 2 people from my original team. I built out the new optimization division with full autonomy. Nobody questioned my vision anymore. I was the vision now. The following year, I stood at the same conference Howard collapsed in. This time, I had the keynote slot. Walked out to a packed crowd and gave a talk on predictive logistics and high-dimensional forecasting. No fluff, no jargon, just real systems that worked. Standing ovation. 3 weeks later, I got a letter, handwritten, no return address, no signature, just folded inside a plain white envelope, mailed to the VectorPath office. You did the work. I only wore the mask. I'm sorry I ever stood in your way. I read it twice, folded it back up. I didn't frame it or burn it or tell anyone, just stuck it in my desk drawer and went back to work. I didn't need his apology, didn't need forgiveness, didn't even need the damn closure. I already had everything I came for, and now everyone else finally knew the truth.